Evening Cherries fans, and welcome to this latest opposition preview show here on Up the Cherries with All Departments. Before we welcome on my very special guest today, here is a little bit about our sponsors, Dental on the Banks. To find out a bit more about what they can do for you, please visit www.dentalonthebanks.co.uk. Now, my special guest today is a mentor to many entrepreneurs, many successful entrepreneurs. He's also the author of 2 business-related books. Also, he does have another book coming out very soon called Mark of a Man. It is a pleasure to welcome onto the show Mark Sephton. Evening, Mark. How are you, mate?
You know, sometimes when people ask me the question, "How am I?" I answer with, "If I was any better, I'd be twins." But I realize most people don't even know what it means. Like, I heard that saying in America, and I just thought it just sounded hilarious that you're so good that you've kind of like you've multiplied yourself. But it's a great question. I'm doing well, Craig. I'm excited, actually. A different pace to normal podcasts that I'm involved in. So looking forward to this. I love football and I love business, you know. So what a great way to bring it all together.
Good stuff. Well, what we're going to do is we'll start with the business-related questions and then we'll move on to the football afterwards. Do tell us how you help business owners being a mentor for an entrepreneur works.
Yeah, well, Craig, I mean, for me, the work that I do is very much around self-leadership. So, you know, I've been working with entrepreneurs for well over 10 years now. And, you know, I love the essence of getting inside people's heads and helping them have a fulfilled life, but also being creative in the way that you communicate and in the way that you show up in the world. If you go to my website, marksefton.com, the main slogan on my website is speak the language of the ones that you want to attract. You know, and I think you can use that in both personal and professional settings. We've got to remember that what we are giving out and how we're communicating will determine, I guess, the people that show up in our life, both professionally and personally. You know, for me, I really like to help people with their own leadership of themselves. You know, and within my work history, you know, my background was hospitality. Always enjoyed working with people. You know, very front facing, love to develop teams, love to create ambience, love to create memories, love to create experiences. You know, for me, as I've got older, you know, I've craved more positive experiences than I have like material things. And, you know, I like to look at the hard as to why people do what they do. You know, and mentoring or coaching, I've always gravitated more towards mentoring. I think coaching really works in the area of sport, particularly in football. I have some football badges. And that seems to resonate. But in life, coaching doesn't really gravitate toward me. Especially the term life coach, it has like some kind of condescending pedestal kind of euphoria around it. Whereas mentor seems a lot more like we're in this together. You know, I'm going to share with you some things that I've gone through the pain and suffering of. and I can guide you so that you don't go through the same pain, or if you are going through the same pain, whether it's in business or in life, that I'm able to move you out of that. I really believe that leadership has to be coming from a place where you've been yourself. I don't think any of us can lead anybody if we haven't experienced some of the terrain and the difficulty and challenge of life. And so, you know, for me, the work that I do, that I've been doing, it's all around self leadership, and that kind of it gets expressed through my books, Craig, or through me hosting a podcast, which I do for Brains Magazine, which is a magazine that comes out of Stockholm in Sweden, though it's English. It's very much focused on English language, and it's on entrepreneurship and development and leadership. You know, I've been on the speaking circuits. I MC events, you know, so I get to express all that I love about business and people through my own successes and failings, and really wanting to just make sure that my life counts. You know, I'm driven by influence, wanting every interaction, whether it's at the supermarket or whether I'm working with a client, for that person to feel more enriched and energized than what they did when before that I had that interaction with them.
Excellent stuff. And of course, you've released a book and have a book about to be released as well, Mark. Tell us a little bit about what you've published so far.
Yeah, so I've published 2 books already. So you've got Inside Job, which is very much around if you want to change your outward experience, you've got to change your inward dialogue. So Inside Job is very much about what's going on in your mind and in your heart. It's very much about getting those aligned so that you can change your outward experiences. You know, and for me, everything is won and lost in the mind. And I think, you know, for example, this podcast that you've created, Craig, first of all, you came up with the idea and then the concept, then you gave it a DNA and you gave it a heartbeat, and then you breathe life into it, and now you're doing episodes. The interesting thing with everything we go through in life, everything starts with a thought, and then it's given legs and an identity. And I really believe that if you have an idea, it's because you've been given the mandate to bring it into fruition. You know, so Inside Job is very much about stirring what's within you out so that you can create something that's long lasting. My next book was Plot Twist. I mean, Plot Twist is a great name, especially for the last 2 years that we've all experienced through the pandemic. That book is really about teaching people how to pivot, evolve, and reinvent themselves. We all have goals and visions for our life. Then something comes from left field and takes us in a different direction. And I teach people how to pivot and evolve through those different challenges, how to be nimble, flexible, agile. You know, and that goes twofold. It goes into the personal kind of ability to pivot, but also in the business sense. You know, high streets like Woolworths that no longer exist, they were the number one when I was a kid. They lost their relevance. They didn't pivot. They didn't evolve. They went bankrupt. Same with Borders bookstore. You know, everybody went online. They didn't pivot. They didn't evolve, and bang. And you think of all these other high streets, you know, as soon as you lose your relevance, you lose your place in the marketplace. And then my latest book, which is coming out on the 30th of November, is available to pre-order at all the major book retailers like Waterstones, WH Smith's, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's everywhere, regardless of where you are in the country, and it's available in all major bookstores. And I have a copy of it here. It's called Mark of a Man. Now, Mark of a Man is actually, I've really focused this for men, though it isn't exclusively for men. The premise of it is to help men become better men, and I really want to look at men and their emotions. So I talk a lot about the emotions we feel as men. I talk about the responsibilities and the expectations of being a man. You know, we know now that, you know, there's loads of campaigns with man's mental health, and, you know, they're wanting men to talk. Now I'm really wanting men to think and also discuss. And so I take some of the challenges that I've had as a man, and some of that framework is around my own divorce. I realized that there's not a lot of information or resource for men that go through divorce. There's lots of stuff for women. There's different groups, etc. When I think of men and even the magazines, the only man's magazine I can think of is Men's Health. Outside of that, there's nothing for men. And I want to challenge men because, you know, we have a responsibility to ourselves, but those that are important to us. as to what it really means to be a man and how we can delve into that. And so I share vulnerable stories and delve deep into what I believe that as men we need to be entering into. I talk about the difference between masculine and feminine energy. I challenge men in the way that they see women and the way that they speak to women as well. So while there's a lot there around their own self-leadership of being a man, I'm also challenging men in their conduct and in the way that they see themselves, but also they see others. So, there's a lot in there, Craig.
Fantastic. And I've actually read your first book, as you're probably aware, The Inside Job, where you talk about positive habits, coping with setbacks, and how to manage expectations within business. What advice would you give to someone who has tried but not succeeded?
What, in business?
Yes.
I think the main question you've got to ask and then answer is, what problem do you solve? I always think that's the crux of any business. The more people that are perplexed by the problem that you solve, the more scalable your business is going to be. Most people have a lifestyle business where they solve a problem for, say, a few hundred people. But if you really want to scale your business, you've got to find a solution that affects a lot of people. And that's why you see all these new businesses that derive now, like Uber, because they solved a lot of problems. It made it more affordable, it's more accessible. People can go for a drink and not have to worry about driving. You've got to look at what it is that you are giving the world, and I think that's where a lot of people fall down. Their solution either doesn't provide a solution, or it only provides a solution to a few hundred people. Therefore, it's not really sustainable. You've got to bring something to the market that has the ability to sustain and meet the need of as many people as possible.
And of course, in general life as well, mentally, how do people cope and come back from any setbacks?
Well, I think setbacks aren't, they don't discriminate. We've all had them. And I think that's encouraging sometimes. Sometimes when we go through a setback, we think we're the only one who's feeling this, because we're so kind of in our own bubble, in our own world. And obviously there's different things that we go through. And just because somebody's going through something harder doesn't mean we need to minimize our own pain, of course. But I think that's a lot to do with it.
Well, what considerations does an entrepreneur need to make when they're trying to market a new idea? So from the start, when they've got this idea, this seed, what sort of considerations do they need to make that successful?
Well, it still probably goes back to what I shared a minute ago, is the fact you got to ask yourself, what problem does this solve? And then who and where are these people, like, that are located? I think if I'm going to bring something to market, I've really got to be understanding of what the consumer's needs are. I think too many people, they become too much about their own business, so they focus on their pride and how nice it looks, and they're in love with it, but it doesn't really matter. It's the same with this podcast, Craig. It doesn't matter about the questions you ask or even how I answer them. Really, the most important thing about this podcast is the listener, and we need to not lose sight of, what we're putting out to the world. Is it to stroke our own ego, or is it actually to benefit those around us? And I think that needs some exploration when it comes to, how do you go about that? And for me, you got to test it, and often you'll never know whether something works until you get it working. There's too often we think an idea to death and we don't give it any substance, we don't give it any action. At least, Craig, you've created this podcast, you've got the concept, you kind of got a theme, and you put in and out there. That's a lot better than people who are still thinking about the concept. it's much better to get it out there and to measure it and to glean and pivot and understand and listen to the feedback. So for me, you can never replace action with theory. You have to both have the idea and the concept, and then also you've got to measure the action. Otherwise, you'll never know whether it's going to work or not.
One thing that I'm a big fan of, and as you know, this is how I first come to know of yourself, Mark, is it's The Apprentice. And you interviewed quite a few of the old Apprentice stars. Not many Cherries fans will know I actually even went in for it at one point. So the people that you've interviewed, 2014 winner Mark Wright, and also Lauren Riley as well, who's had tremendous success since. From the experiences they gave you, what do you think you would need to succeed and be hired by Lord Sugar?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm really good friends with Mark Wright. It's interesting, he was I had the privilege of being the first person to interview him after he won The Apprentice, and he came to the studio in Coventry, and after that I took him for some food, and it's funny because he still jokes about this now, how I had my book Inside Job only recently come out, and I said to Mark, I said, "Hey Mark, how about I'll give you a copy of my book if you buy the dinner." And he was like, he was like completely like, he still talks about that being the best negotiation he's ever witnessed, which was quite funny. Something about Mike is really likable and very, very good at what he does, but he's very hungry and teachable as well, and he's clearly kept exposing himself, to his own growth. I think the thing for me with like The Apprentice and with anything is it's twofold. You've got to be, I believe you've got to be investable. So I think, and the same with Dragon's Den. Often people like you, but they may not like your product. I think if Lord Sugar's going to hire you, he wants to like your product because he's all about the money, in that sense. He's there to make money. I then think, you've got to have the astuteness and the ability to be able to work hard and to be able to go get it. Because I think it's one thing to have guidance and a frame and somebody to bounce ideas off and have that accountability. But he seems to be a man, Lord Sugar seems to be a man who doesn't want to have to babysit you. He wants to be able to connect you, and then you go do the donkey work. But I think it has to be profitable, and I think he's always looking for people that have that ability to take ownership and drive it, and use him as a soundboard and a connector in terms of the right people. But I think there's a lot of emphasis on people like Mark going out there and doing it.
And he's made a tremendous success with Climb Online, building it up from what was just a seed, that idea, into what it is today, which is a multi-million pound business. But also, and the reason why I refer to Lauren Riley as well is she's done a similar sort of thing, where she was knocked out in the 7th episode of the series. But again, taking that seed and growing that. From your time spending time with them and interviewing them, did you see what success that they were going to bring to their businesses?
There's quite a few actually. I interviewed Filippo. I interviewed Yasmina Siadaton, who won it before Mark. There's a few others that I've interviewed. And it's interesting because I think for all of them, The Apprentice kind of opened doors, but it didn't define them. I feel like there's definitely a resilience and a steely determination, a self-belief, I think to put yourself forward for that anyway, I think you have to have, a degree of self-belief to be exposed to the cameras. And of course, there's going to be people that are going to use it purely as a marketing tool. And often I think you can always see the value of a true contestant by what they do afterwards. It's always interesting for me. But I think whether it's Lauren or Mark or any of the others, it's very much a resilience to take the experiences that life brings and to really, really move it forward. And so for me, the characteristics that I see is that resilience. It is that, that ability to keep moving forward. And sometimes you can be the right person in the wrong environment. And as much as I'm a massive advocate for constantly improving yourself, I also think you have to have high self-awareness to know what environments are conducive to your skill set and your energy. A shift of environment can sometimes be the difference. So, for me, I see each of them not only just keep developing themselves, but also changing the environment that they're in, and being willing to take risks and to evolve.
And it's and only from applying for it, and I can never imagine what it's like to actually be on the show. It's a extremely grueling process. Um, how do you think they have to cope with that? And do you think that some people cope with it better than others? What would be your advice for somebody trying to apply for a show like that?
Well, I also applied for it way back. Like, I don't even know what year it was. I want to say it was 2009 or something.
Mhm.
But don't quote me on that because I could be well off. I just can't remember. And I made it to the last 50, Craig, and they said to me the reason I wasn't proceeding was because my personality didn't clash enough with the other contestants. So for me, it's obviously it's obviously a TV show, so it has kind of two elements. He's obviously looking for a serious business partner, but also they want viewership. And they want people that will get into confrontation. You know, and that isn't me. I'm not afraid of conflict, but equally, I'm not going to be a douchebag just because somebody disagrees with me. Because I think sometimes, I'm not always right either. I'm willing to listen and to be objective. So I guess it's interesting as to the advice I would say, because I was authentically me.
Mhm.
I think it was Natasha Scribbins who was a part of that process, who did make it onto the actual show. And I did a few assessments with her during this process. But yeah, it didn't materialize. And it's interesting in life, Craig, because I'm a big believer in being authentic. And it's the same with a TED talk. I wanted to do a TED talk. I had my talk ready to go, but their process is so rigid.
Mm.
Like, my whole talk is about kind of being fluid, being like water, and not being so defined and so predictable. There's a lot of coaches and mentors. Everybody seems to be a coach or mentor at the moment. It drives me a bit nuts, and it's like, I kind of want to move away from the predictable, and ask people to be authentically themselves, because that's when you really start to notice. So everything's about motivation. Why you apply for something like The Apprentice, I think, is a great question to ask. I'm very much interested by people's motivations. And as
Mhm.
long as you know yours, then I think that then you can make better decisions.
Yeah.
But you've got to own, and you've got to be comfortable in sharing what your motivation is. And we all have different motivations in life. Some of us want to be famous. Some of us want to be seen. Some of us genuinely want a leg up and a helping hand.
Mhm.
You know, so I think that's important. But my advice really is to be fully you, but also be mindful of like shows like that there is that emphasis of entertainment as well.
One big part of the process is the interview stage as well. To be fair, this is where a lot of people fall apart. Being interviewed by the likes of Mike Suter, Linda Plant, Claudine Collins, and how can I forget Claude Littner as well? When in an interview, what are the key principles in your mind that you need to get across to the interviewer?
Yeah, it's you know the names. You must love the show way more than I. But something that I've seen from all of them, they all do their research. So it's really important, and it's the same in life, Craig. We can all talk a good talk, but actually, reality is what is reality? I mean, they'll go for anything. There's no point in you blagging something because they're gonna find it, and then your integrity is then under threat. And for me, in an interview, it's the same. Social media. Often people look at people's social media accounts. There's more and more around integrity now. And for me, when you're doing an interview, you got to know who you are, and you got to be honest with what you've achieved, and not make something up. Speak your own truth, have confidence in your own ability and what you have genuinely achieved. But you don't need to make something up in order to, get the job. Because at the end of the day, then you've only cheated yourself. So my advice always with interviews is to do your groundwork, know the company, ask the right questions as well. They say that a lot of success comes down to your ability to ask questions. I always think that you're not just getting a job, they're hiring you. You got to have some self-confidence to know that actually, you want to be interviewing them as well. And I've always been like that. When I was in employment, it was as much as me critiquing them as it was about them critiquing me. I mean, they're getting me, you know, I'm going to bring something good to the table. So I want to know what your culture is. I want to know what the development is. I want to know what the vision is. I want to know what your values are as a company. And so for me, I would always have those in my back locker. It's as much as what they bring to you is what it is you bring to them. But outside of that, it's got to be that your lifestyle is congruent to your projection.
You probably remember this from The Apprentice as well. Sell us that pen, Mark. Did you have that question?
Yeah, I had something similar.
Or it was sell us this bottle of water, wasn't it?
Yeah, like it's interesting, isn't it? Like, I think when they said to me, give me your elevator pitch or something like that, my answer was, I am the elevator, and that was it for me. Like, that was kind of how I wanted to frame it. I do love some of the quirky and the ballsy responses to questions. I remember there was an exam question at school, and question was, what is confidence? And the answer they wrote was, this is. Got top marks. Imagine it, 2 hours. You got 2 hours of a test, and you put this in. Unbelievable.
I'll be honest. When I was in there, I had the bottle of water question, and to be fair, the guy turned around to me, sell this bottle of water, handed it to me. I just stuck it in the bin. He needs another bottle of water, then, doesn't he? That's the way I viewed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I'm sure I'm not the only person to come out with that. And to be honest, I can't take 100% credit for it because I did see it online as well. But there's all these quirkiness that comes out during that process, and it's a lot of fun, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, like with anything, I think you've got to have fun in everything you do. And there's always things in our life that we go through that will either add or move us away from something, and I think life's for living, and each of us have got to take the opportunity to experiment and to try new things, but also feel confident to stay in your lane and sharpen your sword. I think too many people want to be great at too many things, and the reality is, Craig, each of us only need to be good at one thing and just sharpen that sword and serve those in that one thing. And while it's good to be adaptable, to have a good knowledge, to grow, to expose yourself to different things, I think there reaches a point where after you've experimented, had adventure, seen what's for you, seen what isn't, it's then really wise just to stay in your lane and be the best that you can be within that.
Of course, you did mention it earlier on, that you was the host of Talk Business on Radio Plus Coventry for 7 years. What were some of the best stories that you heard from entrepreneurs, and the best advice you heard during your time presenting the show?
Oh, that's quite a heavy, meaty question, that one. I mean, yeah, I literally interviewed thousands of thought leaders and creatives, and the ones that stick out are the ones that taught me something I didn't know. And I'd probably say out of the 1,000 people that I interviewed, there's probably only about 10 that actually taught me something that I hadn't learnt. And those that did teach me something are the ones that I've kind of kept in touch with, and they're the ones that I'm fascinated about in terms of how they communicate. There's certain things in life that we go through where, we have a reasonable understanding, but we realize that somebody else has a much better viewpoint. And one of my favorite ones was actually a lady called Felicity Wingrove, known as Flick. And I think her company is called Zen Communications. And I was really impressed by Flick's knowledge of, I think we've already touched on it a little bit at the start here. Like, this could be the greatest book that's ever written, right? But unless people know it exists, it ain't going to do diddly squat. Same with this podcast. This could be the best podcast that exists, but unless people know it exists, then, it's not really going to make any difference. This woman really knows how to take what you do and market it in a way that really kind of opened my eyes, to the importance of how you communicate. I mean, we know that marketing these days is storytelling, your ability to storytell. But because the way that we see stories keeps changing all the time now, I think for me, that's where a lot of our focus needs to be, especially if you're in business. The challenge is does that person know you exist? Do they know that your product exists? And do they know what that product or what you can do to solve some of their pain points? So it's people like that really kind of were the highlight of the show for me. It also helped me realize that really there's nothing that's off the table. I'm not, I like The Secret, but I also think that on its own, it ain't going to work. You can't just think something to death. You have to apply. You have to go through pain. You have to show up. You can't just say like 1,000 times, I'm going to be a millionaire, and just sit on your ass. There's too much of that fluff. The law of attraction. Yeah, I believe in the law of attraction, but I also believe in the law of hard work. And you can't have one without the other. You can set the attention. You can have the dream vision boards. You can have the affirmations, but unless you're actually measuring the action of what you do in your everyday, you're living in the clouds. And the people that are achieving are those that are actually doing, not just believing. And you need both. Yes, you need to believe. Yes, you need to have an understanding of what it is that you want to come into your life. But you also need to realize, what man or woman do I need to be to bring those things into my life? Otherwise it's just cuckoo, Craig. It's fluff.
Well, let's have a look at Saturday's game. Mark Robbins has got Coventry off to a fantastic start this season. What did the fans expect this year?
I'm sure that my views won't represent every Coventry fan, because, I've had discussions on Twitter already this season mainly about certain players. Some fans see a total different player to what I do. But in terms of expectation, for me, last year, because we had no fans in the stadiums, all I wanted is Coventry to survive so I could see them play. I thought, I don't want to have missed the opportunity to see them play Championship football when I've suffered seeing them play in League Two and League One. And as a kid, that I watched them play in the Premier League. Expectations really for this was just a year of consolidation. I think, mid-table for me was very much my personal kind of expectation. Nothing too nail-biting towards the end, but didn't feel that we had the strength and depth to actually do any better than that. So that was very much my expectation. I'd imagine that would be the case for most, I think.
And you're back in Coventry now, which is great news, back at the Ricoh Arena. From a fan's perspective, how disruptive was it to be playing in Birmingham and Northampton before that?
Yeah, I mean, I actually never went to Northampton once. It just didn't. There was no appeal there. Like, I think a lot of Coventry fans, they went to more away games than they did to. It was just such a weird and wrong. It should not be allowed to happen. In the Football League, it shouldn't even be. I don't think there should be an allowance for it. Playing in Birmingham, I must admit, Birmingham, they were very hospitable to us, and I think they had a much better pitch than we did. So we played some really good football there. We had a better. I think we had a better home record than they did. At St Andrews. I think it kind of took the pressure off. It meant we could go under the radar and we could kind of steady the ship and build something without the expectation or the spotlight. And the interesting thing is when you start getting success in the middle of difficulty, that makes for exciting times because we've been exposed as a club to some of the most unfortunate and not great circumstances, both for the players and the fans and the club as a whole. And the fact that we've started to get a bit of success and we even got promoted away from our home. If you can do things like that in life, if you can achieve something when actually the conditions aren't even favourable, then you've built some resilience, you've built some character. They talk about Manchester United not having a plan and no identity. The thing is, Coventry do now. We do have a plan. We do have an identity. And it's nice because it feels like even if we lose a game, we don't lose 2 or 3 together. I don't even think, though, again, I can't swear to this, but I don't think that we've even lost 2 games back-to-back this season. I think when we got trounced by Luton 5-0, and then the next game, I think we beat Fulham 4-1 at home. That's kind of like the difference in Coventry now. We don't tend to suffer for an extended period. We'll have a blip and then we get back on. And I think that's why it's one of the reasons why we're still in the top 6, even though I feel like our form has kind of dropped off in the last month or so.
Well, of course, we are second. We've recently been knocked off top perch by Fulham. What advice would you give, and this is mixing in a little bit of business as well, to the Coventry players about this weekend's game?
Well, it's interesting because I mean, when I looked at the teams in the league, and I love the game of football. I already identified that Bournemouth were going to they were in my top 2 before the season started. They've still got some cracking players that played in the Premier League. They've got a good young manager. They've got an identity. And they've always done well. I can't even think the last time Coventry even beat Bournemouth. They've always been another level. It was the same with Norwich last year, but though the Premier League's been too much of a jump for them. That's my concern, because if Coventry can beat Fulham 4-1, and Fulham are sat at the top of the Premier League, they're going to get spanked in the Premier League. Like there needs to be something done there. But my advice to Coventry players is the fact that we've already shown that we can beat the top of the league, so they should have confidence that if they play their game, they can get a result. And Coventry are funny because we tend to raise our game against those teams that are up there, but sometimes in that case, sometimes the better team, if we both raise our game, then Bournemouth would come out on top. But I do find that we will always give a team a game. So, my message to the Coventry players is the fact they absolutely can get a result against Bournemouth. If you apply yourself and you work hard, you do the basics, then I think that we can beat anybody in that league. But I also know that, for me, Bournemouth have the edge still. If both teams play at their best, then Bournemouth will just edge it. And because our record hasn't been great, I feel like I could pretty much predict we would win against most teams. But this is the one where I'm a realist as well. But I think they've just got to enjoy it and believe, because they can definitely get a result and they can definitely even beat Bournemouth. But whether they will or not, this one's tough. This one's a tough one.
The thing is we are on what we would call a bit of a poor run of form. So got beat by Preston. We trounced Swansea at home, but then got beat Derby away and drew against Millwall. And to be honest, Millwall should and could have easily won that match as well. It was only down to Jefferson Lerma why, we actually walked away from with a point from the Den. So I'm not 100% confident, but based on what you've said before as well, and tying a little bit of business, what we need to do is apply ourselves right. We need to take things back to basics, like you would in business. If something goes wrong, take it back to the basics and do the simple things right again. We might be missing Gary Cahill as well through injury, so again, that's a bit of a concern for us. But hopefully, fingers crossed, Steve Cook and Chris Metham can come in and do the business. But do tell us a little bit about the Coventry team. How do you expect them to set up, and who are the biggest threats?
Yeah, well, it's good because we do have threats, and we have threats all over the pitch. I think, we battered Birmingham. For me, Birmingham were probably the poorest team I've seen us play at home. We battered them. We were just so blunt in the final third. It was so frustrating. We'd get into good areas. We'd get it to the strikers, and it was either a powder puff shot or the shot would go like so wide. Like, it was really frustrating. If we'd had somebody like Mo Salah in our team, we would have absolutely smashed it. Like, for whatever reason, our strikers, and we've got 4 good strikers, though one of them's injured at the moment, Waghorn. But between Godden, Gyökeres, and Tyler Walker, they're really, like, when they're on fire, they're really a threat. But they were all blunt. Danger Man O'Hare, he is an unbelievable player. Same with Hamer as well. Gustavo Hamer, what a fantastic player he is. There's certain players, Craig, that I know could cut it in the Premier League. And Hamer and O'Hare definitely are 2 of them. I think the Chelsea guy that we've got at left back, Maatsen, he's only 19. He's going to be a good left back. He's going to be. I mean, we actually had Patrick Van Aanholt on loan at Coventry before he made a name for himself. And Maatsen's Dutch as well. Played at Charlton last year. He's a good attacking left back. I like him. He's going to have a career. It's going to be a similar path to Van Aanholt. I see that. I think Dabo, for me, is probably the best right back in the Championship. Came from Chelsea. I really like him. Centre back wise, you've got McFadzean, who for me, I was surprised we extended his contract last year. Though actually, he's been more consistent, but he always has an error in him. He's very similar to Harry Maguire, I find. Harry Maguire also has an error in him too. And that's my concern with McFadzean. He is a brick. He'll head everything. But is he really a footballer? He doesn't have the finesse. You got Michael Rose, who's been swapping places with Clark Salter from Chelsea. But Rose had a really good season, not last year, but the year before. And he's definitely one who he's been the one that I've been more disappointed with, because he definitely has the ability. He has started to apply himself the last few games. And then Hyam is one of only 3 players that have come up with us, I think, from League Two. He's the one who's impressed me the most. He's the one that's grown and developed. Championship, he's definitely in the right sort of realm. Could he reach the Premier League? Possibly. But he's the one that I've been impressed with the most. I still think that, next to Hamer, we'll sometimes have Kelly, our captain, Liam Kelly. He's very steady. And then Ben Sheaf we got from Arsenal. I personally don't rate Ben Sheaf, and this is some of the disagreements I've had with other Coventry fans. They think he's great. For me, occasionally he has a great game, but again, it comes down to consistency. That guy gives the ball away so much. He gets caught in possession, and then, he's a bit clumsy as well. For me, he's just not a player that I would pick. And some Cov fans love him. Some people don't. When he does things well, it's good, but there's too much inconsistency for me. It's really difficult when you've got a young player. You want to give them the opportunity to grow and develop, but then you also don't want them to take liabilities, and then cause an error when you, especially at the top end of the table, you want to keep that momentum. You don't want it to be a place where people are learning. You kind of want people to be delivering. It's a fine balance, I think, between the two. But we've been been playing 2 up top with a kind of a diamond in the middle, and then 3 centre backs with wing backs. I like that. I do like having 3 centre backs with the wing backs as well, and then 2 in the midfield and 1 at the top of the diamond, and then the 2 strikers. I do like how we set up. I do like the formation. I think we could do with recruiting another centre back and maybe another centre midfielder. And I'm a bit concerned about the goals that have dried up. We played Sheffield United and Birmingham and didn't score, but we did get 2 clean sheets. That's 2 clean sheets in a row, which I think is the first time. So in some ways, based on what you're saying, it would seem that maybe a draw is possible. But I actually think that the first goal is crucial. I think whoever scores that first goal will win the game.
And defensively, Coventry have looked very, very good in the past 2, especially. And apart from that Luton game, been absolutely outstanding. I did watch a bit of that Fulham match, and to be honest, Coventry played Fulham, who, are easily one of the best teams in the league off the park. Hopefully, we're the other one. But do you think that you can get back into the Premier League this season?
Well, I mean, if you asked me that at the start, I'd say no chance. But like with anything, you have to be in it to win it. Yeah. And if I don't know, it's hard to, because I think as a fan, you're always optimistic, right? I think that you're probably a little biased too, maybe. I think if I just look at it, I think, if Fulham are top and we beat them 4-1, and I think if we're 5th, then the table doesn't lie. You've got Stoke there that are on the same. We've got West Brom coming up after Bournemouth. I think, for me, there's no reason why we can't make the playoffs. I honestly think that Bournemouth and Fulham will win a promotion or outright. But could we? The interesting thing with Coventry is, since I was a kid, we've never lost at Wembley. If we got to Wembley, I'd fancy us regardless of who we play. I just can't believe how good our record is at Wembley. Spurs in '87, which was ages ago, and then we won the Checker Trade Trophy, and then we won promotion. And I fancy if we got to the playoffs, I'd fancy us in the playoffs, because I think our fans are insane. We have such a great following. I think we can beat anybody in the playoffs. So yeah, I think so. But I think it'll be interesting. I think if we're still in and around it at Christmas, then yes, I think the next, say, block of games are really going to tell us where we're at. I mean, Bournemouth and West Brom, you know, tough games, you know, but we've shown that we can mix it. We can mix
But
it
if
in
you
there.
do get 6 points from those two games, you're right in the mix. You're pulling us back towards yourselves, and therefore, I even though we might be so far ahead, I think that there is that added pressure. How do you think, or if you was Bournemouth, if you was the Bournemouth manager, how would you tell them to cope with that pressure? What would be the advice based on it's everybody's cup final at the moment?
Yeah, I think with anything in life, Craig, you got to have self-belief, but also you can't rest on your laurels. I think if you're doing the basics and you're constantly holding yourself accountable, and when you lose, you really reflect on why, and then you set up shop and you understand your position and what's expected of you, and you're switched on mentally, and you're ready to work, and you're conscious and you're mindful. For me, that's the advice that I would be sharing. If I was Bournemouth, of course, I think like when people are near the top of the league, they're a target for people to want to kind of get one over them, because it's gonna be a scalp. It's gonna be good posture and grow confidence for the opposition. But I think there's no surprises. Bournemouth know that they need to get promoted this year. I think there is that expectation. They brought in a Premier League manager to be able to bring that about. You've got some Premier League players in your squad that do have the ability, have had the experience. But I think for me, it's just about getting them to stay accountable. To really reflect on their own individual performance, and really just want to build and create something together, because there's a great togetherness at Coventry. I love that. I love the camaraderie. There's a very close knit group of people, which I love. I love that. I think that's the thing that impresses me the most. And I guess I don't get to see that as much with opposition, because I'm not a fan of opposition, so I don't look for that. But I think, for me, it's got to be about, just applying yourself, doing the basics, having that self-confidence, but also not the pride, because as soon as you think you're going to turn a team over, you'll get found out, and we don't want that. We want to be able to apply ourselves, in life.
And actually, it's funny you say that, because personally, I think, and quite a few Bournemouth fans have said this, we went up to Derby, we expected to win there, and we got turned over ourselves. And I don't think, we didn't apply ourselves that match. And of course, against Millwall, we had, I think the confidence had been lost a bit. So we need to get back to winning ways. How do you reckon it's going to go, Mark?
What, the game between Bournemouth and Coventry?
Yeah.
It's tough, I think if Coventry are at home, I think we would beat you 2-1. I must admit, I don't feel I can be as confident at Bournemouth, and I think it's because the last few times we've been to Bournemouth, we've not even shown up, I don't think. So that concerns me, and the fact that we were so blunt against Birmingham, that concerns me as well. It's hard. It's really this is because normally I would just say something and have a conviction of it. Like, am I going to be surprised if we lose? No, I'm not. Do I think that if we really show up, then we can get a result? Yes. I think my concern is we haven't won that many at home. We're a different animal at home.
Mm-hmm.
We're different animal. I think because you have home advantage, I think I think Bournemouth will sneak it. I mean, it's hard to say as a fan, and probably Coventry fans, if they listen to this, they'll be like upset with me. But that's what my head thinks. My heart thinks we can beat anybody, including Bournemouth. But I think if I'm trying to be realistic, I think you guys will sneak it. I'll take a draw all day long, and if we play like we can at home, then I believe that we can get all 3 points. But it's such a on the fence answer, isn't it? But it's because of all those things that are shared about the record that you have over Coventry, the fact that we're a different animal away from home. We're not as good. I think we've only beat a couple of teams. Hull. I think we beat Hull, Millwall. Maybe one other, I think. But yeah, I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be tough.
To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if you beat us. But then again, if we're back to our very best, if we play like we did against Swansea, I think we could beat anybody on our day, including Fulham. I think we've got the best striker in the league in Dominic Solanke. Yeah, Mitrovic, is outstanding, but he doesn't track back. He doesn't come back. He doesn't create things for other players, whereas Solanke will do. He's not a greedy forward. Mitrovic, if he's in the box, you expect him to score, but he won't come back and create something. Personally, heart says 2-1, but head says I think it's probably going to be a draw. I think Coventry will come here with a plan. I think they probably will have seen, especially the Millwall game, would have seen how to beat Bournemouth, which is the high press. And that's an interesting one as well, because you look at what teams have done. Millwall managed it quite well. Preston managed it quite well. They pressed us, but they didn't go all out. Reading pressed us, but extremely high. In 20 minutes, they just tailed off. They just dropped off. In the first 20 minutes, they were easily better side, but they just ran out of steam. And I think Coventry will get in our faces, and I think it will, but they're a good footballing side as well. Yes. So that's why I'm not overly confident. But we need to get back to winning ways. So hopefully a 2-1, but I would not be surprised by a 1-1 and, a defeat at the moment. It would never surprise me, but, it's the last thing we need. We need to get back to winning ways to make sure that the confidence is flowing back through.
Yeah, I think whoever wins, it will be a great win for whoever. Yeah, because we're both up there, and it sounds like we're both in the same sort of form. Which you may even think that a draw's the likely outcome here. It's interesting though, isn't it? Because if it were, like I said, if it was Coventry at home, I would say we'll beat you. But because we're not, I just feel like this will be a step too much. And interestingly, I think when you are in a bit of a bad run, it goes one or two ways. It either continues or it's the wake-up call that you need, And I feel like Coventry will feel like they missed opportunity against Birmingham, And while we haven't lost the last two games, I think if we want to stay in it, there will be a sense of wanting to get a result here. And I think it's going to be what team wants it more and what team shows up. But it'll be a great game if both teams show up.
Yeah, it will be. Hopefully, fingers crossed, Gary Cahill's still in the side. Billings back, better than ever. And, but it will be interesting. And it's going to be another tough game for us. And straight after that, we've got Fulham. So no pressure.
And we've got West Brom. So it could be a really interesting 2 games for both sides here, actually. But, you know, like Bournemouth are a club that, you know, I don't have any negative towards. Some clubs I like, ugh. But Bournemouth are one of those that, you know, I think they're liked by most.
Yeah, by most, apart from that lot down the M27. We shan't mention them. But no, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Mark, and all the very best with the book launch. And do give it one last plug.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be out on November 30th. It's available to pre-sell at all the major show retailers. So I think it's something that's I've put a lot of heart and soul into it, and really want it to make a difference in people's lives.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much again, Mark, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Craig. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Appreciate it, and have a great weekend.
And you as well.
May the best team win.
Yeah. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
And thank you, everybody, for joining me on this opposition preview show. Please do remember to hit the like, the subscribe, and the bell button below to be alerted to any new videos we do here on Up the Cherries in all departments. Please also do remember to watch our previous interviews with Steve Cook, Luther Blizzett, Andy Bernal, Steve Fletcher, Beth Powney, and many, many more. Also, it is a pleasure to actually tell you about Kiza, who has actually been discharged from hospital in Uganda after contracting malaria. He was given a blood transfusion and is now making good progress. So hopefully he's back out on the sidelines very, very soon, and all the very, very best wishes to him and everybody in Uganda. Until the next video, up the cherries, and I'll see you then.